Welcome back to Junko with Junior. No square body today, OBS time, C1500. So this was my Pawpaw's truck and it's going to become Weston's truck. And we got to get some work done on it. Gonna take it on a little road trip. So gonna leave the square body at home. It's been to Kentucky twice now to LS Fest, but we're changing it up this year and we're going to the C10 Fall Revival in Denton Farm Park, North Carolina. So we're gonna make some memories in Weston's truck. We're gonna have guys weekend and hit the road, log some miles and see if we can have some fun. But we got to do a few things to get ready for it. The truck's running and driving great, but the factory gauges, a couple of them aren't working, and I use the factory instrument cluster and the Holley EFI digital screen to be able to look at everything except for the speedo. So we don't have a speedo in the truck, so it's time to make some changes and get all that stuff done. So what are we going with? We have Nvu gauges, New Vintage USA. Really nice set. So what drove me to pick out this set instead of other companies? There's a lot of gauge companies out there. A lot of them are made in USA, which I'm a huge fan of. But the problem that I was having is none of them had that finished look like I wanted to have until I found New Vintage. So it's just a classic, clean, it's not, a loud in your face gauge setup. And another thing that was important to me is a lot of people sell these, pre-cut gauge panels and you can put your own gauges in them, but this comes all together. Notice there's no extra holes for high beam indicators, seatbelt lights, check engine light, turn signal indicators, all that sort of stuff. It's all built into the gauges. So right around the center of the needle there's the turn signal indicators, your high beams, a warning light. You can program all this stuff with these, and I've been reading through the instructions. It's pretty ridiculous what you can do with these gauges. I'm really impressed with them. In a way, you could say it's almost too much stuff. Wiring it's not going to be too bad. Programming them, we're just going to take our time and go through it. One thing that I thought was really cool, I'm pretty old school. Newer vehicles, they tell you when to change the oil, but I've always just kept a little window sticker and the square body up on the top of the windshield. That's what I use just to keep track of my miles to change the oil. This, you can actually program the gauge so it keeps track of your mileage, and if you set it at 3,000 miles, it's going to tell you at 3,000 miles, change engine oil. You can program a shift light into the LCD screen. It's just ridiculous the amount of things you can do on here. Really cool setup, so I'm excited about it. It's going to be a nice addition to the truck and get it up to date in the metering department so we can really see what's going on with this thing and keep an eye on it and take care of our investment so we don't do any damage to it. So it's pretty cool. All the 2 1/16 gauges, they come pre-wired and it's not all assembled. We went ahead and did that. But it comes with all these wires and you plug them into the speedo or the tachometer and all that wiring's done. So what's left? Well, it looks like a lot, but you just take it one wire at a time. So they come with 2 of these plugs. They are the same. One goes in the speedo and one goes in the tach. And they give you the pinout for everything here. Very detailed instructions. This is a 38-page book. So there's a lot of stuff in there. We're not going to use all of it, but anything we need to know, it's in here. Another cool thing, this little gadget right here. When you pull the factory bezel and gauges out of the truck, you're left with factory wiring. Yeah, you can cut that plug off and terminate each wire, but it's not the cleanest way of doing it. I've done it before. I did it on the square body that way. It works. I'm not proud of it. So leave the dash in the truck. It's not something I want people to see. And I'll admit it, I wasn't as good back then as I think I am now. You learn and you get better as you get older, hopefully. So they sell this Snap Adapt, and it's actually a 3D printed rig. When you unplug the factory instrument cluster, you plug it right in here. And then they give you the pinout of all these wires. We're not going to use all of them, but the ones we need, they'll plug in here. So it's so much simpler. It takes all the guesswork out of it. Now, we're not going to use the factory sending units. You do have to use their oil pressure sending unit, their water temp, and we are going with GPS speedo on this, so we don't have to deal with any programming, even though it seems like they've really simplified that process. We're just going to go with GPS. That's what I have in the square body. It's plain and simple, and I like it. So let's dive into this thing. We're going to start tearing out the old stuff in the truck first, and we're going to take it step by step from there. Well, there you can see the factory setup. I hate to get rid of it because it is, factory, and I do think it looks cool, but, with the speedo not working, odometer not working, water temp not working, it's time. We got to make some changes. So what are we going to start with? Well, we have to get rid of one of the greatest things on this truck, which is the real wood. So this truck is a Mark III custom truck, which was a conversion company in Ocala, Florida. And basically that meant when you bought their package, you bought it at a regular dealership. They had the work done there. And you got two-tone paint job, you got real wood inside the truck, not wood grain, and you got bed rail caps and probably wheels and tires. And that was it. That was the nicest truck you could get back in the day. It was literally the Denali of trucks back then, and I love every bit of this real wood kind of stuff. So we got it all out of there, and there's another cool feature of these 90s trucks that people just don't understand anymore. Look at all the nicotine and ashes. This thing should look like it's ready for NASCAR with Winston painted down the side of it, because they have a lot invested in this truck. So the instructions tell us to cut around the factory gauge connector, but we have to be careful because obviously there's wires on that connector. And then if we don't have enough room for the back of the gauges, we can cut out this rectangle here. Well, you can see that I took this loose. It slides and snaps into place there, but I took it loose just to see if it would be able to wiggle that out of there. It doesn't. It's in there, so I'm going to slide it back over. Well, I'll have to move that piece inside again. There we go. I'm going to slide it over here so I can cut this right side out, and we know we're not going to hit any wires that way. Then I'll be able to slide this over further that way, or pop it out and be able to cut in here and keep a better eye on those wires to make sure we don't damage anything there. And we'll check the gauges, see if they fit, because the brackets on the back, depends on if you trim the studs or not. But we're going to see if it clears without cutting this. If it doesn't, we'll cut that out too. Okay, now I think I have the right tool. So I went digging in the old box and found this thing, which is just kind of like a burr. But remember, if you're using a tool like this, that can go a long ways down in the dash. So we need to be very careful and just run the tip through there, because I don't know what's on the back side of that. And we sure don't want to tear anything up. All right, there's the first piece. It's definitely scary. We'll keep going. Okay, now that we're done with that obnoxiously loud and huge mess of a process, we can get onto things a little bit here. So the instructions do tell you, be careful, the main wiring harness runs behind that. Holy cow, they don't tell you it's right there. So I was trying to just barely put that tip of that tool through there. We're going to get these shavings vacuumed out of here, and hopefully I didn't nick that harness and cut anything, but that is ridiculously close. In fact, it's attached right there. There's nowhere for it to go. So I can't, that's scary close. I hope everything's all right there and I don't have to fix another wire. So here's the problem we're up against. Not a major problem, but it's not what I expected going into this project. So if you remember, I got this deal from SnapAdapt, as I said earlier. So this is going to plug directly into the factory gauge cluster, and then you can just put spade connectors on it from there, and you're golden. Problem is, when you plug that thing into the back of this, there's nowhere to put it. The gauges are right up against all this stuff. There's just not a good way. Could I maybe, jam and cram some stuff down there like that? I guess. That's just, so far that's not my style. This AC duct is right in the way, and this main wiring harness is right here as well. And I called him today, and the guy said that plenty of people have done it and didn't have any issues. He had never heard of anything. So either I'm just that dumb, or I'm just not that willing. I like it. It's a cool piece. In theory, it should make everything easier. But I think in this application, rather than trying to get all this jammed in there and then getting to these spade terminals, it's probably going to be easier just to cut these wires and wire them into, the gauge harness. I hate to cut the thing off there, but it doesn't matter. It's not going back to factory gauges ever, and this plug doesn't do us any good. Just thought this was going to make it easier. Cool product, probably works really good on a lot of stuff, but I don't think it's the right piece for this truck. Well, after lots of Dremel work, we've got two pieces. So this factory gauge filler panel that has this radius cut on it here that the factory lens used to go on, we reuse this piece, but we have to cut this out. Now they do say you can use one from a 91 to a 94 and it doesn't have this, but I couldn't find one for sale. So, you know, in efforts to get this thing done, we're just going to cut it out. It does take some time to cut that out. That's a lot of work with a little rotary tool there, but we got it all out of the way. Didn't damage anything. You know, you're starting to get pretty thin when you cut away all that reinforcement there. So I was a little concerned, but essentially it's going to sit on there just like so. And I don't know what these two holes are for down here. I asked NVU when I was on the phone with him today, and the guy looks it up in the instructions. He says, oh yeah, that's for the ground buttons. No, I don't think so, because they're way too far down and this bezel covers them up. So the ground buttons are so you can go through the different screens on the Speedo and tack to, you know, get to whatever screen you need or reset a trip meter, that sort of stuff. It just uses a ground signal. So we're gonna have to drill our own holes for these. I kind of wish we didn't, because everything is just so nice and perfect from them. And I would think when they had some sort of CNC machine cutting this out, in my mind it would have been really easy just to knock two more holes in it and they'd be in exactly the right spot. But hey, we got to drill some holes. Here's another minor little detail. So took my time, measured out where to put these ground push buttons. They're momentary, you know, just a spring loaded. So I centered it up best I could with a square with the needle there and the top tick mark of the 4 and 50 mile an hour, and feel like I got them really straight. Took my time doing that, not thinking that when I pushed them through, now I did take my time drilling them so they fit nice and snug in that hole, but guess what? They're not long enough to put the nut on the back side of them. So I'm not sure where NVU intended for people to put these push buttons. I feel like it should have had a hole drilled there and a little recess machine down into it so that you could put the nut on from the backside, because clearly it's not those holes like the guy told me today. So went ahead and drilled our own. They're not going anywhere, but I just feel like it's one of those little bitty details that for the money that was spent on these gauges, we should probably be able to screw these little nuts on the backside of these buttons here and you know, install them like they should be. But again, I don't feel it's going anywhere. It's not a concern, so we're going to let that ride for now. So I was diving into the instructions on the wiring, because that's going to be the next thing. So before these ever get set or mounted in the truck, I need to go ahead and wire up these pigtails. Like I say, we're not going to use that snap adapt. It's a cool piece. It's just, I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze on this particular application. So they give us both these harnesses that plug into the tack and the Speedo. Well, guess what? It's the same plug on either one. They have the same wires, but the way these gauges, the small gauges, fuel, volt, oil, water, hook into the tack and Speedo, you can't have those crisscrossed. So I don't have a fancy label maker, but I went ahead and put some heat shrink on here and wrote it as the Speedo plug and as the tack plug. That way they don't get messed up, because all these are the same colors on each one on both these harnesses. But if it's fuel, let's say, for example, it has to go to this one, or a volt has to go to this one. So you don't want to, you know, flip-flop them and have gauges not working when this is all said and done. So in the instructions, it tells you which one wires to which. So both these harnesses will have some extra wires coming out of here when we're done that we're not going to use. We'll trim them down and tape up the ends and get it all sealed up. So we've been making some progress in the truck. Like I said, we're not going to use that snap adapt wiring block with the terminals on it. I thought it was going to make it easier. There's nowhere to fit it in the truck, so we just started terminating everything inside the truck, cutting them the wires off one at a time off the factory plug. So that's all cruising pretty good inside the truck. It's practically impossible to film putting in the oil pressure sending unit, so we didn't film that, but we took the factory one out, put the one that comes with the gauges in the back of the block, got their water temp sending unit in there. So we're really getting down to the nitty gritty. I did talk to New Vintage USA the other day, and the guy was really helpful, super nice, so I was impressed with that. But even more, customer service, just the world in general, it's been getting less and less. It's on a steady decline. It just seems like people don't believe in it anymore. But while I was talking to him, just asking some general questions about the ground buttons and stuff, the guy was just, he was awesome, and it really caught me off guard, honestly. So I was talking to him about the ground buttons that we had to put in here. They didn't have the holes drilled for them, so I drilled them. We talked about that, and he's like, oh, well, that's odd, we didn't put the holes in there. I'm like, yeah, well, no big deal, they're in there now. So while he was on the phone, I said, well, hey, I got one more thing. The panel is cut out for the factory shift indicator down here in the bottom left corner, just like the factory had it on their gauge cluster. I could put it back in just to fill the hole so it doesn't look like a hole, you know, it would look like something, but the truck's a 5-speed manual, so it's really pointless to have that there, and it would clean it up some if it wasn't there. So I said, hey man, I didn't see anywhere on your website or in the catalog or anything that you have the option for a manual transmission truck, or if we don't want the shift indicator there, if you had a, you know, automatic with a floor shifter, aftermarket setup or something. He's like, yeah, we sure don't. He says, but I can make you one. So I'll be dang if the guy didn't whip one up and send it to me, and did some select shipping. So I got it here in like a day and a half from when well, it would have been next day. So yeah, the guy wasn't messing around, knocked it out. So it's kind of one step forward and two steps back. We're going to take the time to take all the gauges out of here and put them in this panel, and then we'll have to re-drill the holes as well for the ground buttons for programming the gauges and sorting through them. But I just thought that was really cool that the guy took the time to do that and saw my, you know, concern and, you know, preference that we don't need that or want it on this particular truck. So thumbs up to New Vintage USA. They're class act. They don't mess around. It just doesn't happen a lot these days. So I thought that was pretty cool. So we're going to go ahead and switch all the gauges over, you know, get that done again. And then once we get that dimmer in the mail for the gauges, because the LEDs, they're really nice when we light them up in the shop here, but I think when we're driving the truck at night, they're going to be a little bit too bright, and it just kind of gives you a little glare and makes it harder to see things down the road. So I'd rather be proactive and put that dimmer on there now while everything's apart, and we can easily access all the wires. So that's pretty much it. We're going to swap these out. As soon as we get that dimmer, we're going back together for the last time. It's official. I'm tired of wiring. So it's down to the little stuff on this truck. We went ahead and set our gauge panel on the dash. These wires are longer than I want them to be, but it's kind of a necessity. I really thought that everything was going to be on these two main plugs here, but then that leaves our two push button ground switches, which are to go through the gauges, like I said, to set them up and, you know, set your odometer, stuff like that. There's not a way to do that very well. I could put some little spade connectors on it. I just wasn't feeling it. I'd rather have a solid connection. If I ever had to take it out, I'll just, you know, deal with it and cut the wire at that point. And then the other thing that we added that finally came in is the dimmer for the LEDs, because I don't want them to be too intense at night. So drilled a hole in the faceplate for that, because I just figured we'll stick it on there and it's out of the way of everything. I didn't want to put it in the dash and it being connected and, you know, the wires being connected to other stuff, and it just wasn't, I don't know. It's still not my favorite as far as wiring goes, but it's all going to work just fine. Then we have one purple wire left on the tachometer. Well, the tachometer needs an input signal, right? Yes, it does. So in the entire book of instructions for the Holley EFI in this truck, it mentions nothing about a tachometer output signal. Kind of disappointing. Come on, Holley. It's a HP ECU, and it is nowhere in the instructions which wire is going to be our tach output. So I started, you know, doing some searching online. Plenty of other people have that same concern, and plenty of people said which wire it is, which pin it is. It's a blue wire with a white tracer. Well, I don't want to cut it yet until I talk to Holley, because it goes from the plug on the distributor all the way to the ECU. Now the ECU may not need that, but I'm thinking, well, if it doesn't need it, why would Holley put it there? That doesn't make sense. So I'm not going to cut it yet. What I did, while the whole dash was out, Weston and I, he was on the front side of the firewall, I'm in here. We extended our purple wire on the tachometer harness plug and just ran it out into the engine bay for now. We'll coil it up, zip tie it. We're not going to have a tachometer signal until Holley tells me where to put it, but the wire is already there and ran. So now we can plug our gauges in and start to stuff all this stuff back in. We can put the dash panel back on, because in order for our lights to work, we have to have the switch hooked up here, the headlight, parking lamp switch, and the dimmer as well. the dimmer's not going to have function because a 1990s dimmer doesn't control LEDs. That's why we went with the dimmer from Nvu gauges, so that we can turn them down just a little bit so it's not blinding. So that's that on the wiring. I'm going to get all this stuff screwed back in here. Got a million screws to put this dash back together, and then let's see what it looks like. And we have gauges. It turned out pretty good. There's a couple little things that I would wish were improved on. So we didn't put the clear lens back over that curved lens that the factory had, because then you can't get to the buttons. Sorry, dropping everything. But I think it looks better with it, and it fills in that radius on the corners over there. So if you look to the side, there's a gap there where that factory trim would have filled that in and you didn't really notice it. It's not the end of the world, but it's not the greatest thing. It is what it is at this point. And the dimmer switch, I put it, that little aluminum knob down there in the bottom right corner, that's where I put it, not thinking that trim was going to be right. It was going to be right in the way of the trim, so had to grind out a little notch on the trim. Not my favorite thing, but it is what it is at this point. You can only do this stuff so many ways. You know, it's just part of the challenge. You can put the stuff together and take it apart 15, 20 times, but you're also going to drive yourself crazy doing that. But if you sit back here and you look at it as if you were driving, it is a sweet, tight and right setup, and that's just fine with me. So let's see what we've got on some of this stuff. The ECU's unplugged, so we're not dumping fuel in the engine every time we turn the key on and check this stuff. Turn us our power on, shut the AC off. That's working. So for some reason it doesn't give us any readout on the speedo, which it may not until all this stuff's programmed. There we go. So you can just hit that button and there it is. There's your odometer. So let's try our parking lights. Nice. I like it. Clean. Blue. Yeah, little shop lights bleeding through there. That little knob is so far down in the bottom corner that I'm probably going to have to adjust that with some needle nose. But that's one of those things that when it's set, that's it. We don't have to mess with it anymore. So we'll, pull the truck out at nighttime whenever we do a test drive on this thing, and we can get that adjusted how we like it. But so far, some really clean gauges. I like them. I'm satisfied. Oh, I almost forgot. Let's check a few other things. So that'll be our headlights, our high beam indicator. Sorry, it's not the greatest lighting in here. Underneath, right in there, try to get this thing to focus a little bit for you. There's our high beam indicator, and we can flick it and it goes off. Then right turn signal. I know it's blurry, but trust me, it's a really clean arrow on the face of the gauge, and we're fighting lighting situations here. Left turn. And we also hooked up the parking brake indicator, which is not turning on. That's interesting. I know we took the time to do it, and I even checked it while we were doing it, but for some reason that is not turning on. I wonder if it makes a difference if the key's off or on. No. So we'll need to dive into that. Our parking brake indicator is not working, but that's not the end of the world. Everything else appears to be working. We are back up and cruising, finally. Long project has come to an end. So pretty sweet setup. I do like some Nvu gauges. It's a nice movement and everything, good clean lighting. Pretty good install, just not a fun install to do on this truck. That's not their fault. They didn't design the truck. So definitely nice quality stuff. Would I recommend it? Absolutely. A couple of things, that I screwed up on the install that could have been a little bit cleaner, but that's part of it. A lot of the stuff you just don't know until you get in there and do it. So I'll live. We'll be just fine. Little details. Another thing, in the instructions, they do recommend that you run new wires for your sending units, for your oil pressure and your water temp. I didn't feel like doing that because the factory wires are already there, all tied up in the harness, the loom and everything, so I didn't want to mess with all that, having to completely redo it. So when I cut the wire off the factory sending unit plug for, say, the oil pressure or the water, I actually ohmed out that wire back to the main harness and the cap where I cut it off that main plug. so that I knew I was on the correct wire, which we had the sheet for with the colors. But when I ohmed it out, I also know that now I have a good wire. So I chose to reuse those. The instructions say to do it otherwise, but hey, we went for it and it works out just fine. So got the oil changed in the truck, a few little things we need to do, and me and Weston are going to be